March 9, 2026. Iran moves against the U.S. fleet in the Persian Gulf, and Iran's supreme leader escapes a U.S. drone strike. Then this happened. What follows becomes a chain reaction no radar operator in the region will forget. The alarms begin before sunrise. Inside the command center of a U.S. destroyer escorting the U.S. fleet, a radar technician stares at a sudden spike across the display. A thin line appears. Then another. The screen flashes amber. Possible launch detection. Far above the Earth, an American infrared satellite has already seen it. A plume of heat bursts from the desert coastline of Iran. The signature is unmistakable: rocket ignition. The timestamp reads March 9th. The Persian Gulf is still dark, but the sky above the water has already changed. Inside the Combat Information Center, voices tighten. Missile launch confirmed. On another screen, a timer appears. 120 seconds. Somewhere deep inside Iran, the supreme leader has reportedly just survived a precision drone strike attempt targeting a moving convoy. Intelligence suggests the strike narrowly missed. The convoy dispersed. The target escaped. And now, retaliation has begun. But what happened next would shake every war planner watching the region. The U.S. fleet had moved into the Persian Gulf only hours earlier. Officially, it was a routine presence patrol, carrier escorts, guided missile destroyers, electronic surveillance aircraft circling above the Red Sea corridor. Unofficially, tensions were already boiling. Intelligence analysts had been tracking Iranian command communications for days. Activity had increased across missile brigades along the coastline. Radar units were repositioned. Drone bases were moving equipment. Something was coming. Then the attempted drone strike targeting Iran's supreme leader changed everything. According to early reports, the strike package involved long-endurance unmanned aircraft operating beyond the Gulf, feeding targeting data through satellite relays. A convoy believed to carry the supreme leader had been located briefly, but seconds before the strike window closed, the convoy reportedly diverted. The drones fired. Explosions ripped across an empty highway. The target escaped. Iranian command networks lit up instantly. And now the radar screen inside the U.S. Fleet Command Center confirms the response. 90 seconds. Multiple launches detected from Iran's southern coastline. Not one missile. Several. The trajectories begin to resolve across the radar grid. Some head south toward the Persian Gulf. Others arc westward toward the Red Sea corridor. One analyst leans closer to the screen. These aren't random. The predicted impact zones begin to calculate. One cluster threatens shipping lanes near the U.S. fleet. Another appears to be heading toward Israel. But that wasn't the real problem. The missiles climbing out of Iran are fast. Some are conventional ballistic profiles. But one radar track behaves differently. It flattens during ascent, then begins maneuvering. Hypersonic profile, possibly Mach 5 or faster. The combat room goes quiet. 60 seconds. Orders move through the ship. Aegis weapons control, prepare intercept solution. Across the U.S. fleet, combat systems wake up. Destroyers align their spy radar arrays. Data links activate between ships, aircraft, and satellites. Every sensor begins sharing one picture. A single digital battlefield. The missiles from Iran continue rising. Heat plumes streak through the upper atmosphere. Booster stages separate. Warheads glide forward. Inside the Aegis system, algorithms race through solutions. Trajectory prediction. Threat priority. Interception windows. Multiple inbound tracks confirmed. The command officer speaks calmly. Engage when ready. But what happened next pushed the system to its limits. 45 seconds. Vertical launch system hatches open across two destroyers guarding the U.S. fleet formation. Rows of sealed cells suddenly erupt. Interceptor missiles ignite. SM-class interceptors roar upward in bright columns of flame, punching through the morning darkness above the Persian Gulf. The launch shock rattles the decks. Inside the combat center, the radar lines begin to converge. Interceptor vectors adjust mid-flight using guidance from the Aegis network. The missiles from Iran are still climbing and maneuvering, but the window is closing fast. 30 seconds. One of the Iranian tracks begins descending early, accelerating. Possible maneuvering warhead. The computer recalculates. New intercept path. Interceptor adjusting. Above the Gulf, the first American interceptor closes in. At hypersonic speed, even milliseconds matter. The warhead from Iran streaks downward. The interceptor rises to meet it. Two objects, moving faster than rifle bullets. Then, a flash. A white explosion blossoms high above the Persian Gulf as the interceptor slams into the incoming missile. Fragments scatter across the upper atmosphere. First intercept confirmed. But that wasn't the end of it. More Iranian missiles remain in flight. 20 seconds. Another interceptor launches from a second destroyer in the U.S. fleet. This time the target is the maneuvering track, possibly designed to evade traditional interception. The interceptor climbs rapidly. Radar guidance locks tight. The Iranian missile begins its terminal phase. But the Aegis system adjusts again. Impact. Another burst of light tears through the sky. Debris rains harmlessly into open water. Inside the command center, tension holds. 2 kills confirmed. But radar operators see something unexpected. Several smaller radar signatures separate from the main debris cloud. Decoys. Iran's missile had carried multiple penetration aids. For a moment the radar picture becomes chaotic. And that is when the countdown reaches 0. But what happened next changed the entire situation. Far from the U.S. fleet, another set of launches erupts. This time not from Iran. From the opposite direction. In the Red Sea corridor, radar stations detect additional projectiles entering the airspace. The trajectories point west, toward Israel. Iran's shocking retaliation had just begun. While the world focused on the attempted drone strike against the supreme leader, and the missile exchange with the U.S. fleet, another strike package had already launched. Long-range missiles and drones moving through complex flight paths designed to bypass early warning networks. Israeli defense radars ignite instantly. Arrow interceptors begin preparing for launch. Iron Dome batteries activate across key cities. But the incoming wave is larger than expected. Inside the U.S. Fleet Command Center, analysts realize what has happened. The missile launches targeting the fleet were never the primary attack. They were a distraction, a signal, a message. The real retaliation was aimed at Israel, and it was already underway. But that wasn't the only shock. Electronic warfare sensors aboard the U.S. fleet begin detecting unusual signals across the region. Jamming attempts. Navigation interference. Iranian systems attempting to confuse radar tracking networks across the Gulf and Red Sea simultaneously. The battlefield is becoming digital as well as physical. Inside the destroyers, communications teams counter the interference. Secure data links continue feeding targeting information across allied networks. Israeli defenses lock onto the incoming threats. In the sky above the region, interceptors launch again. Bright streaks of light race upward. The first interception flashes above the eastern horizon. Another incoming missile disintegrates in midair. But analysts studying the radar tracks realize how close the situation came to spiraling further. If even one missile had slipped past the U.S. fleet defenses earlier, the damage could have been catastrophic. Warships operating in tight formation have little margin for error. A single successful strike could ignite fuel, ammunition, and chain reactions across multiple vessels. And if the attempted drone strike against Iran's supreme leader had succeeded, the retaliation might have been even larger. But what happened next revealed the deeper reality of modern warfare. In the hours after the intercepts, intelligence agencies begin piecing together the timeline. The drone strike attempt, the escape of Iran's supreme leader, the immediate missile launches, the decoy warheads, the simultaneous retaliation toward Israel. Every event connected in a rapid chain. Speed is now the defining feature of conflict. Minutes determine outcomes. Satellites detect launches within seconds. Algorithms calculate interceptions faster than human commanders. Missiles travel hundreds of miles before political leaders even receive their first briefings. And across the Persian Gulf and Red Sea, naval forces remain on high alert. The U.S. fleet continues scanning the horizon. Radar arrays sweep the sky again and again. Because on March 9th, one thing became unmistakably clear. Missiles are faster. Drones are smarter. Electronic warfare is everywhere. But the real battlefield is time. Seconds. Decisions. Reactions. Iran's missiles launched within moments of the failed drone strike. The U.S. fleet responded within seconds of detection. Israel activated defenses almost instantly. Modern warfare no longer unfolds over days. It unfolds in flashes of light across the sky. And somewhere far from the radar screens and interceptor launches, a convoy carrying Iran's supreme leader continues moving through the desert. The target of a strike that almost changed everything. A strike he escaped. And a retaliation that reminded the world how quickly the balance of power can shift when missiles rise from the horizon. Because on March 9, 2026, the alarms sounded. The missiles flew. The interceptors answered. And for a few tense minutes above the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, the world watched the sky.